Welcome to Cycling Conversations with inGamba, where we celebrate the art and the culture of the sport, the rhythm, the ritual, and the refinement that surrounds it. inGamba means in the know, and as with our cycling tours, these conversations are meant to bring you behind the scenes in our world. This is a space for when sport meets elevated living, where a former pro racer dissects the brutality of racing a classic, followed by a cycling CEO sharing their favorite spot for a post-ride Negroni. Along the way is our creative director and award-winning cycling photographer James Startt, who joins me, Molly Hurford, to unpack the cultural currents shaping the sport and the destinations that make it so beautiful. To learn more about our award-winning bike tours and to join us, visit ingamba.pro or the link in the show notes. All right, welcome back to Cycling Conversations with inGamba. I'm Molly Hurford. I'm joined by inGamba's creative director, James Startt. And I mean, if there ever was a legend of Tour de France coverage to talk to us about the Tour de France, it is James. James, what has you excited about this year's tour, and why are we chatting about it today?
Well, I spent a lot of time thinking about the tour, but I wrote, as I always do, but I wrote a piece about sort of my Tour de France. And the Tour de France for me has become as much a tour of France as it has a bicycle race. It's just this amazing road trip every year, this amazing, postcard of one of the most diverse, geographically diverse countries in the world. And we get how many helicopter shots have we gotten over the spectacular landscape. So I kind of wanted to focus on that in this podcast because obviously there's the Alps and the Pyrenees, but we traveled through so much more during the tour. And so in this whole past week, we've spent in what we call the France Profonde, deep France. So I wanted to delve into that a little bit because we kind of often can gloss over that. And I wanted to shed a little light on what is deep France, because it's in many ways the heart and soul of the Tour de France. And then in contrast, one of the most iconic aspects of the French landscape, the Mont Ventoux, which is very close to our heart at inGamba, because of lead guy Eros Poli, all of our trips around Ventoux and Provence. So I thought that would be a nice segue from the most rural, almost forgotten landscape to one of the most iconic ones, and to take a look at these two different aspects of France, the Tour de France, and the country.
Yes, and for me, listening to you chat about this with Ed Pickering, who's covered the tour almost as much as you have, and then of course our own Eros Poli, who has not only raced the tour but really has kind of been part of the cycling landscape. Again, as long as you have, listening to you three talk about this was so interesting to me because I've been doing this for a while, but I do think I still look at the Tour de France and just think about the racers. And I think this conversation gave me such a different perspective, really considering the landscape from both the cultural side of things, but also from the side of things where the course is almost another contender in the race, right? At Ventoux, hearing Eros talk about the suffering and his tips for riders that are going to be taking that on in the Tour de France terms of Zwift. You're not racing your competitors when you're going up Ventoux. You are racing that mountain. Like, that mountain is your competitor. And I think that's just it's going to give watching that stage a completely different lens for me.
Absolutely. But, the Tour de France is nothing if it's not transcendent. It's a transcendent sporting event. And why? Because it's bigger than life. Why? Because it's bigger than sport. And it delves into so many different aspects of life and drama, landscape, culture. And so when I look at the tour, and that's one reason I wanted to have Ed come in, because his wonderful Substack that he's created this year for the tour just talks about all those different aspects that make up the Tour de France, the culture, the history, the nuance, and of course the bicycle racing. And so we kind of wanted to delve into that and then finish it off with something kind of forward looking, as the Tour Femme is going to the Ventoux, and it's as I said, something that's very close to the hearts of all of us here at inGamba.
Absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into this conversation, first with Ed Pickering and then with Eros Poli. Enjoy. Welcome back to Cycling Conversations with inGamba. I am joined today by, of course, creative director James Startt, and we are joined by Ed Pickering, who you may recall from our Paris-Roubaix Cubism podcast episode or from the magazine where he was the editor-at-large. Ed, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so Tour de France time. I mean, it's really, truly cycling's Super Bowl. And if there are two men that can speak to this race, this landscape, I can think of no better people than you two. So let's maybe start by giving our listeners just a bit of context for the ones that have not been following the Tour or you two for years. How long have you been covering the Tour? What is your reason for loving the Tour? Is maybe a good spot to start.
Oh, well, that's it. Well, this is my 37th tour, which is a lifetime in many ways, and over half my life for sure. What is the reason? Sometimes I don't even know anymore, but it's just such a part of who I am and what I've done. It's sincerely part of my DNA. My annual schedule revolves around it. Where am I? I never have to ask myself where I'm going to be in July. I know where I'm going to be. And Ed has done, I think, 20 of them now. Ed followed and covered 20.
Yeah, I've covered 20 tours on the ground. Worked out recently, this is my 42nd tour as a fan or a journalist.
The big thing about the Tour isn't just the riders, it's the landscape. And that's a big part of what we're chatting about today. So, James, do you want to kind of just introduce our listeners to the area that we're in right now and, why this is so fabulous for us, for viewers?
Sure. It's interesting because I think people that follow the Tour de France from a sporting perspective tend to focus on the big mountains, maybe the time trials. But the Tour de France, is, as we often say, is a tour of France. And people like Ed and I, we're passionate about that. We're like, we'll be going over the tour schedule and going, what kind of obscure town do we want to focus on this year? And we've been to many. I remember 3 years ago, Ed was all excited about going to the stage in Moulins, and we did a whole trip around the Puy de Dôme, and so it's this part of the tour that attracts us, and why I guess is because it's so much of the soul of France is in these more rural areas, and both of us actually did stories this week where we talked about La France Profonde, deep France, if you want, and that's where we spent the middle part of the tour, as we often do. And we've been going to towns that most people never heard of, that Ed and I haven't even always heard of. But I was reading I've been reading his wonderful stories on his new Substack. And if you haven't already, check out Ed's Substack. If you like history, art, culture, society, and bike racing all in one, you can find it there. They're really wonderful stories every day, wonderful vignettes about the tour. And that kind of perked my imagination and said, we should do something on the France Profonde. What is La France Profonde? And so, because that's where we've been this whole last week, all these little towns, these very quiet rural areas that are just normally forgotten until the Tour de France comes through. But it's hard sometimes to define it. Ed, how do you define La France Profonde?
So the best definition I've been able to come up with, because I don't think you can draw a line and say, what's inside this line is La France Profonde and what's outside it is not. But it's the part of France that lies between the more interesting parts of France. And to me, that is what makes it interesting in itself. It's not the mountains. It's not Brittany, which has a kind of separate little culture. It's not the Basque Country. It's not the Midi or Provence. It's not the industrial north. It's certainly not Paris and the big cities. So what is left of France after you've taken out all those bits? It's the kind of amorphous bit in the middle, which is largely rural. It's got small towns, a lot of villages, a lot of farmland, and it's topographically, it's not that exciting. It's just kind of maybe rolling hills, a lot of little woods. And it's just that kind of bit of France that you see in some of these stages across the middle of France during the Tour de France, where it just seems to be going through this kind of bucolic landscape where there's no big landmarks, there's nothing particularly there to look at. At the same time, that's what the Tour is sometimes to me. It's these kind of long, lazy days in the summer of the Tour peloton going through these landscapes when it's traveling from one interesting part of France to the other. But I love the part in the middle as well.
Now, I'm actually curious how both of you are feeling this year because it is so dry and so hot that the typically beautiful green landscapes are actually more burnt brown landscapes. Do you think that adds to kind of the grit and toughness of the race? Does it give it a different element? How is that feeling as two men have seen when it's been lush and green and, not quite as inhospitable?
Well, I think that it's obviously, I think, made the racing harder. Has it changed what is the France Profonde? I mean, the fans are still out there. The campers are there. People are camping by the roadside, cheering day in and day out. The villagers are still there, and they're still decorated in wonderful colors when the tour comes through. So I don't know from our, kind of visual postcard perspective if it's really changing things. But Ed, I had a question that might help isolate, or it might let us understand the France Profonde a little bit better. What do the departments of l'Orne, the Mayenne, the Meuse, Nièvre, Saône-et-Loire, l'Allier, Creuse, and the Corrèze and the Cantal and the Aveyron all have in common?
They sit there. I know what you're getting at here, James. I'll say I used to live in Allier, so I'm very, very attached to that part of it. In particular, I spent a year in the town of Moulins as part of my degree, as you mentioned earlier on. And Moulins, for me, is the spiritual capital of La France Profonde. But this is also part of an area of France called Le Diagonal de Vide, which translates roughly as the empty diagonal. And I've got a slight... I don't think Le Diagonal de Vide and La France Profonde are the same things. I think parts of the Diagonal, you mentioned Cantal, you mentioned Creuse, these are quite topographically interesting places. They're a bit more hilly, they're a bit more wild. And to me, it's too interesting to be true France Profonde. I'm not saying that there's a lot to say about there isn't a lot to say about the Diagonal de Vide. I think Cantal, for instance, I love Cantal. The tour was there for the stage to Le Liorin the other day. And what Molly said about the burnt landscape, you really saw it there. It's like that high ground in the Massif Central of Cantal was very, very, normally that's green. That's one of the rainiest areas in France. I think, in fact, the Puy-Marie climb been recorded as the rainiest area of France. Normally it's green. It is now burnt yellow. But that Diagonal de Vide, James, I think you're very interested in this region, aren't you? Because it is a part of France which is a place apart.
Well, the actual thing that they have all in common is that they are all departments that actually have more cows than do people living in them. And so I was wondering if maybe this is a prerequisite to being La France Profonde, a place where more cows live than people. I don't know. I don't have that answer. And it's interesting because the Diagonal de Vide, we did a feature on this several years ago with Rouleur, if you remember. And I got to admit, I didn't even really know what it was until we did that feature. But it goes from like northeastern France, like around Lille, and cuts through the center, skipping, of course, across Paris. But, it could be Le Beauce. It could be just these large areas that are not densely populated. And it goes all the way down into maybe the Périgord or something like that. So, yeah, I think we have a kind of idea that the France Profonde is somewhere in the south central part of France, but actually not necessarily. It's just deep France, wherever it is, where there's, not a lot of urban cosmopolitan influence and perhaps not a lot of people, I guess, huh?
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is why France is France, and this is why the Tour de France is able to succeed and thrive in that specific country. Because France is very rural. It's got the same population as the UK, but its surface area is twice as much. And the Diagonal de Vide and La France Profonde, their defining characteristic is that there just aren't many people there. There aren't any big population centres. The big population centres of France are, Paris, and then cities like Marseille, Bordeaux, Toulouse, Lyon, and they're kind of isolated. And between them, there are these wide open spaces. And that sense of space and the lack of population makes France what it is. And it also means the Tour de France is able to cross these wide open spaces. It's very hard to have bike races in densely populated places where there is lots of urban settlements. You can't do it. It's just lots of people and bike races don't mix that well. Even in when the Tour goes to cities in France, it kind of sticks around the edges of them because you can't really go into the center. So bike races need space. Which is the country in Europe which perhaps has the best balance of a big population but also lots of space? That's France.
Yeah. And this is what is, it's, there's a whole Paris intelligentsia, and, was such a big part of the 20th century, 19th and 20th century. But this France Profonde has also inspired generations who kind of consider it to be the true France, the true beauty of France. Jean Genot, one of the early 20th century great French novelists, was always celebrating the beauty of rural France, not the big centers. And Antoine Blondin, who is a famous or infamous writer after the war, who followed many Tours de France. He was kind of known for being a slightly right wing, heavy red wine drinking literary guy who followed actually the Tour for L'Équipe. And he was, he called the Tour a sort of moving theater that every day, every July would just race around these quiet roads of France Profonde, and Jean-Marie Leblanc, the former director of the Tour, often referred to the Tour as a celebration of rural France. I mean, he loved that. He came from the northern reaches of this area by, in terms of the what we called the Diagonale de Vide. He came up not far from Lille, but he loved the rural aspect of France, and the way that the Tour de France had a unique way of sewing it all together and putting it on to, for the month of July, the world stage. And, it was a real celebration of that. And that's what we've been doing the whole last week. We're kind of getting out of that today as we're, the stage finishes in Chalon-sur-Saône. I mean, that's getting a little exciting. We're going into lush wine vineyards, and we're close to the Saône River Valley, which becomes then the Rhône River Valley. And that's all rather exciting for La France Profonde. But it's been a wonderful week of discovering deep France, I think.
The interesting thing also is that it's kind of the elephant in the room as well. The Tour de France stages that go through La France Profonde, they're not always the most exciting. And I think that the race does tend to kind of skirt around it as much as possible. It doesn't want to, the Tour wants to go to the mountains and the high ground and the interesting topographical places. And La France Profonde isn't that. So the Tour de France organization is in this kind of bind and tension between wanting their race to be exciting every day, but also knowing that the true France is there also to be part of the race, and also that they can't get between the interesting parts of France. I say that in inverted commas. I'm not saying France Profonde is boring. They can't get between the interesting parts and the other interesting parts without going across the flatter, quieter parts. And I think that's all part of the rhythm and pace of the Tour de France, that you can't have the exciting, intense stages where lots happens without these quieter lulls in the middle. It's like a change of pace in the middle of a piece of music, or it just gives you a chance to take breath, relax, and still get something different out of the experience of watching the bike race.
What's interesting is that, with race directors have their own way of sort of constructing, construing, and creating the tours. And Christian Prudhomme has, he's been about dynamizing the tour routes. So even when we're in these areas, he's looking for stages that could possibly break up any kind of monotony, as opposed to the years when Jean-Marie Leblanc was the race director. And year in and year out, it was almost cookie cutter format. We'd have the first week in northern France before dropping down to the Pyrenees or to the Alps. But Christian has really put front and center, say, the Massif Central, l'Auvergne, all these places that are really part of what we would commonly call La France Profonde. And, the stage when you put in a stage that goes over the Puy-Marie, well, that's not a boring stage. So they're finding ways to go from the typical highlights, Alps, Pyrenees, to through the center of France in a more dynamic way, I think. But I don't think, for myself, I'm looking at this as much from a geographical landscape perspective as I is from a racing perspective. And And I think, yeah, these are some of the the great stages of the tour. If you really want to get a sense of, I mean, the tour is sort of suspended in time when it's in this part of the country, and it sort of steps back from itself a little bit at times, I think, and they're very special moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because as someone who kind of comes at this much more from the racer and the training angle of it all, I always think about the stages around this time in these areas as being really more recovery stages for the riders, because we can't have the Ventoux climbs, we can't have these crusher stages without stages like this. So it's funny, as you're talking about it, I'm having such a different appreciation for the race that I've been watching, because I always think about it just from the muscles and the lungs perspective, not this is truly like the heart of the country.
Well, we used to have these expressions, recovery stages, transition stages, and those are almost anachronisms now. I think there's been one breakaway, and who wins it? It's like, Mathieu van der Poel. I mean, that's not just a no-name rider that slips into a solo break and nobody cares about it, right? I mean, that's those guys had to be super strong to keep that slight lead that they had to win. So I think that's changing, and part of that's Prud'homme, and part of that's modern day racing. So, in a sense, the perspective that Ed and I grew up with, where these were kind of the sleepy stages, where we could maybe recover a little bit, is not necessarily correct anymore, because there's so little room for anybody to recover on the race now. But it's just so much, but it is so much about the landscape and these just roads that are lost in time.
Now, I also just have to ask both of you, in doing all of this coverage, this is maybe kind of a side question, but I'm curious, what was the best thing you've eaten in some of these rural towns? Because I have to imagine that some of these places have just fabulous bakeries, boulangeries, just the food. You must get some good stuff.
Well, I'm still trying to get over that cassoulet I had in outside of Foix. That was, and does Foix, a place like the edges of the Pyrenees be considered La France Profonde? You don't have to go very far from the Pyrenees to feel like you're in the France Profonde, I can tell you that. But all of these regions actually have, the Cantal has just some of the most amazing cheeses. At Christmas time, at my local cheese market, I know that for 1 week out every year, they will have a version of the Cantal that's been aged for 36 months. And that's only for a week, and it goes fast. And there's all, the Aveyron has all its own specialties, like aligot, which is sort of mashed potato with cheese mixture. And from a culinary perspective, there's plenty of things. This is rural France. They're into making fresh foods, meats, whatever, and you can eat very well there. So that's not a problem.
Love it. Ed, any top
picks? I'm very aligned with James on the cassoulet. I think cassoulet is one of France's greatest dishes. It's not really very appropriate for high summer. It's a kind of slow cooked stew of very heavy fatty meats, beans, garlic, and it's pretty heavy, but there's having a big bowl of local cassoulet in either Toulouse or Foix or Carcassonne or Castelnaudary with a very, very robust glass of Languedoc red is one of the pleasures of the tour. And I'll also add, when the tour goes kind of through the Périgord, Dordogne region, that's real kind of culinary, rural breadbasket France. And the food, it's very local, very high quality, very simple, very well made. And I love going there because you can choose it, especially the duck, which I'm a particular fan of anyway. I think Périgord is, you always eat well in the Périgord. And then again, James and I will have, in our experiences of covering the tour on the ground, eaten our fair share of, bad meals late at night or motorway service station sandwiches along the way. So being on the Tour de France itself is no guarantee of great food, but being out in France following the tour, sometimes you can eat like a king.
I love it. It's either the best meal you've ever eaten or it is a gas station sandwich. Fabulous. Ed, let everyone know where they can find your Substack before we wrap up here.
So just do a search for Edward Pickering Substack. I've called it Cycling the Universe and Everything, which is a nod to Douglas Adams' book, Life, the Universe and Everything, in which the answer to the eternal question of life, the universe and everything was 42. And I felt, because I was naming it this summer and it was my 42nd Tour de France this summer, I thought that was appropriate. So Cycling the Universe and Everything is the name of my Substack.
Love it. Well, Ed, thank you so much for joining us. As always, you are such a great addition to the podcast, and we love having you.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you again.
All right, just a quick break before we get into our chat with Eros to remind you that if any of these roads sound like you really want to get there, you want to ride, you want to see them for yourself, you want to feel the wind in your face, you're wild enough to want to climb Mont Ventoux, we have trips for that at inGamba. James, what do we have coming up?
Well, actually, quite a lot. 2027 is going to be a very big year for inGamba in France. We're essentially doubling our offerings. Of course, we have the very successful Ventoux Provence trip. And of course, we have the Paris-Roubaix Flanders trip. But we're going to two new regions that are guaranteed to be stellar, and I can't wait. First, Burgundy, which when it comes to beautiful French landscapes, it's hard to beat Burgundy. The roads through those wine vineyards are just to die for, as are the meals and the bottles that we'll be drinking in the evenings. So we've come together with a really beautiful new Burgundy trip in 27, which we're going to offer on 2 different weeks during the year. And then the French Alps. I mean, we got the Dolomites down, we've got the Italian Alps down, and we've been knocking our heads for years going, how can we do the French Alps right? And part of that was finding the accommodations that are up to our standards, which is not always easy in the summertime when the ski seasons are closed and stuff. We come up with some great accommodations, and we're going to have a great trip in the Alps with all of the classic climbs there. So, we're all in with France, and right now, of course, because we're in the middle of Tour de France season, and we're looking already ahead and forward to 2027.
Perfect. And we'll include links to all of those trips in the show notes, and feel free to get in touch with us to chat through what you're looking for in a trip and how we can help. Okay, let's talk with Eros now. Okay, so we were just talking about the French landscape. We're talking about rural France, but now let's move in to the giants, the stages that we all love to watch, to talk about, to reminisce about. We're talking about Mont Ventoux, and of course we couldn't do that without inGamba's one only Eros Poli. Eros, welcome to Cycling Conversations with inGamba.
Ciao a tutti. Thanks for inviting me to this. Fun, have fun. Something new for me. It's okay. Have fun.
We'll call it fun.
Thank you.
Call it fun. This has to be more fun than climbing Mont Ventoux at the, well, you know what? Actually, maybe climbing it during the Tour de France, winning that epic, amazing stage was more fun. But I have to imagine that at the time, it did not feel very good.
I prefer to be here with my conditioning on and watching Tour de France on TV.
Wow.
Okay. That I did is done. Now enjoy different.
I just thought it would be interesting to juxtapose, our talk about La France Profonde with one of the most iconic mountains in France, the Ventoux, and one that's very special to inGamba, largely because of you, Eros, obviously. Last year, the men's tour was at the Ventoux. This year, the women's tour, it's going to be one of the key stages. The Mont Ventoux is so many things. And you were such a historic figure in it, as you wrote one of the great pages in its history with what generally is, many of us consider one of the most unexpected, improbable victories and one of the most magical ones as well. And you've been coming back with inGamba. I mean, how many times have you climbed the Mont Ventoux?
Yes, a lot of time, probably more than 20. I didn't count it, but I know I started the Mont Ventoux a couple of times here at the beginning when I'm already Mont in inGamba in 2015.
Yeah.
Then every year 2 times, and then 3 times 1 year, then last year 4 times, and this year will be 6 times. And then this next week, in a couple of weeks, I'll be there for the Tour de France top finish in Mont Ventoux. Also because the day before will be my birthday, so I will celebrate my birthday, probably climbing the Mont Ventoux or another, for maybe, I don't know which number, but I'll be there for my birthday, August 6th. And then probably again in August 7th for the women top finish at the Mont Ventoux.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
we collaborated on a wonderful documentary about your day on the Ventoux, called Grinta, which has been actually, it came out last year and it's been selected in 5 different film festivals, at least around the world: Vancouver, Banff, big bike film night in Utrecht coming up in October. The Bicycle Film Festival. It was a wonderful recap of your day on the Ventoux, and it captured the emotions, I thought, so well of it, so well. Just how unexpected it was. What an incredible effort you put in to hold off the Pantanis
Yeah.
and Indians, and being out there. Um, and what are your memories of it today when you think back about that incredible day on the Mont Ventoux?
You know, the memories for me was it was a regular stage at Tour de France. Try to win a stage for me was for me, my target was one day to be the first at the top of the big mountain. Because obviously, like my weight, it was most of the time the last one to pass the top of the mountain. Try to survive day by day. My target was around in Paris because my life was a life as a domestique. I was lead out man at Cipollini, then I was lead out to Moncassin Pass, O'Grady, many sprinters, Silvio Martinello in the tier also. But, it was a small team, but Cotonino, the other was attack to show the jersey in the TV to make something happen. And then a couple of time happened, 3 times happened to the front to show my jersey. First time to Futuroscope with the under 60K solo attack. Then on the stage of Tourmalet, Luzardo Tento finish. I was in the front on the Perisou, they catch me the top of the spam. Obviously, it wasn't on my stage, it was a mountain. But it was a first task. What I mean? To pass the top as a first was a dream come true. Or can you imagine the people open in front of you and to be the first at the top? I thought it was a Perisou called that Spain. It was a small mountain, my epic mountain to the front. For me, it was a big day. Also, the day top finish on the Saturday. But then 3 days after, it happened to attack again, and then I f- and to be the first at the moment too. For me, moment too, the time was one mountain like the other. Nothing special. I discovered it was an amazing mountain, so legendary mountain at the conference press. One day, so what do you think? You on the stage you want to? Yeah, on the stage you want to was great. You understand. Today you do something great, something unique in this way to the front. You attack solo, you can moment to Pantani try to catch it, and you'll be able to arrive at the finish. I say yes. For me, it was to be the first one day. It just happened, and then I won. Yes, you won the moment to stage. So it's something. And then what's happened? Yes, I was popularized probably more in France than Italy. Nobody took care of me in Italy because the other side it was Gianni Bugno, Chiappucci, Cipollini, Ballerini, all the stuff. I was domestic. So, and then when I arrived in Gamba, Joao believed in me, in my personality, to try to promote my personality. And then someone arrived in the trip. They said, "Hey, we can do a documentary about you." I said, "Come on, are you joking?" No, no, serious. What you did is something great. It's a great history. Okay, but I still can't believe it. So now I become more popular now than before. Before I was just a domestic. Now I'm Aerosport, the giant, won the Mont Ventoux stage to the France '94.
The giant of Provence.
Yeah,
It's amazing. It's an amazing
yeah,
film. It's a wonderful film. And we've seen it many times on the different trips, and it never gets old. Um, but I remember, Eros, I interviewed you once. I believe it was the 1998 tour, and you were riding then for a French team, Team Gan, right? And
Yeah,
I believe you. I'm pretty sure you said, well, there was an expression in Italy and they translated into France as well. You can never be a prophet in your own country. And you realize that your reputation, that what you did on the Ventoux resonated more in France. And you spent the rest of your career with the French teams and you know French so well. I mean, next year we're designing a trip into Burgundy and you were immediately, oh, I know Burgundy. I raced there many times. And you came up with this incredible trip that we're going to do just based on your racing experiences
yeah,
in France, or the French Alps trip, where we're doing all kinds of trips next year. And you were the lead on these because you raced in France so many times.
yeah,
Um,
of course.
and so I thought that was interesting. But when I see that movie, and I see, they document you the pain and struggle to get up that mountain. And you told me, you said, it was the only time in my career as a professional where my speedometer went under 10,
Yeah.
and you were just grunting and pushing, and it was so hot. But I don't know that, does it ever get any easier going up the Mont Ventoux? I mean, it's just such a hard climb.
Yeah, especially it's so hard, but then especially when you climb in July, 3 p.m.
Yeah.
42 Celsius, like date happened this year, the Tour de France. There was the same 94. I remember that they were super hot, and I remember I took a lot of water from people on the road are going up to just put it on my neck because I need to refresh because it's so hot and needed to refresh. So the past was not like now. To find they have all the type of support. They can have ice for the car. They have a bottle for the motor next to you. At the time, I can have water just from my car, nothing else. No ice.
Wow.
I remember at the moment I made the attack the day, I have no car support giving me water. The car cannot pass because all the peloton stopped to pee, to take a water, to take off, and they let me go. But the car cannot pass to give me some support, give me water, and nobody have water. So I remember I spent almost 20 or 30, 25K without water. I started to
Wow.
be completely dehydrated completely. So
Yeah.
hopefully, when I call the the neutral car Mavic, I think it was Mavic, so asking some water. Sorry, I will wait for the car behind to pick up some water, and then they come back with a cane of Fanta because I'm rolling through the fit, a cane of Orangina Fanta. Eros, pay attention. It's boiling Fanta, it's super
Ah,
hot. So, but they're like, give me the Fanta, please. I open it, I squeeze. I remember they came by my hand, I squeezed completely, like, and that was the best Fanta in my life. The moment was so. I think this that helped me survive for another 10K before my car come to me. Yeah, this was the best moment. Not the best. It was a dramatic moment because you know you're 30, your lips start to be drier, you start to be dehydrated, have nothing. Can
yeah.
you imagine they give you a boiling Fanta? For me, it was the best Fanta ever.
Now you can
Well,
only drink it hot.
Yeah, yeah, but doesn't matter. The moment was a boy.
well,
I burned up my lip because it was. Yeah,
it's interesting because we've had so much conversation in this year's tour about the heat, and yet, I remember that day. I remember down in Vaison-la-Romaine, people were like jumping into the fountains. It was so hot. I mean, the Tour de France can get very hot and has gotten very hot, but perhaps not for the length that it has this year. I think we
yeah,
would have 3 days of heat, maybe a week, but it's been so hot since the month of June here that it's the
it's true.
accumulation of heat. I think that's really affecting it because, yeah, I remember that day. I mean, it was no stage today, no stage this year on the tour was any hotter than that day on the Ventoux. Um, but I guess the only difference is maybe the accumulation day in and day out that we've had this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's been fascinating to see. But when I look back at the movie, I'm reminded just how hot it was that day. What's it like when you see the movie Grinta? When you watch it today, you still get emotional every time you watch it.
I got emotion just when I arrived the last 5K. When I commented here, so I realized it's done. So because at that moment, uh, I realized, okay, it's done. I can I can relax and take it easy and enjoy the moment, knowing that my wife, my daughter, all my friends will be in front of TV watch me. So as I see now, talking about this, is making me very emotional.
Yeah,
It was a probably the best emotional moment in my life. That's
yeah,
my word now is
yeah.
emotionally
I know every time
because
we
I
watch.
back at this moment for me was
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Yep.
they captured it so well. The way you threw off your hat and then bowed to the public like
And then
Pugachev.
there was
You're
the
the first.
joy.
Yeah,
It was the joy. Was like I say, um, it's like a show. I say, in the front, like for me, was a huge, you say theater. The
yeah,
people around me. So it was the best way to say thanks to all
yeah,
people up the mountain. And then it was the best way to say thanks also to the friend to
yeah,
give me the probably opportunity. But my idea was to celebrate like
yeah.
I think I done for you guys a good show. It was a good show for the people.
You put
I
on a
hope
great.
you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the show.
You
Something
put
like
on a
that.
great show. You put on a great show.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really interesting because now you spend a month of your year in Provence at the foot of the Ventoux. It's become almost a second home for you or a third. I don't know. But I mean, you
Yeah.
know that area so well. And it's one of our, for inGamba, it's one of our amazing trips. I mean, of course, there's the Ventoux, but every time I go down there with you guys, I'm just so blown away by every day of that week is so beautiful. Be it the Gorge de
It's so different. You're
Don,
right.
it's
Gorge de la Nesca.
yeah,
Yeah.
Coach Nesca, the amazing coming up the side from So through the fields of lavender. I mean, it is such a beautiful week of riding, and then the accommodations are so special in Crillon and we're never far from Bedouin, which is kilometer zero. So I mean, it's a really a wonderful week, and it's actually become your second home now, huh?
Yeah. This year, for sure, yes. I pass more time in Provence than home.
Before we let you go, Eros, we did want to ask because the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift is going up Mont Ventoux for the first time this year. First, I want to ask, what is your best piece of advice as the man who soloed up there and won the stage? What advice would you give the riders that are hoping for a similar solo breakaway, other than drinking a warm Fanta partway up?
Yes. Deep breath. And don't watch up. Just watch your front wheel go up and just ready to suffer a lot. Is not just be ready for big pain for all on the time, especially the last 3K. The first five, okay, pretty long wait, and then we turn the left, or you say, start to pray, and then ready for the pain, long 1 hour pain,
Oh,
and
one
then
hour of pain.
enjoy also to the top, have a fun. And then you have a top, open a beer or Fanta if you have it, and have a fun, enjoy the Fanta.
Eros, do you have any suggestions on pacing? Because it's a very, you can break the climb into three sections, right? The sort of easy, false
Yeah,
flat, and then you come around that turn, and all of a sudden it's a wall for what, 10 kilometers or 6K? I forget exactly, until you come out of the trees. And is there any suggestion you might have on pacing? Do people tend to try to attack too hard up that steep part, or when you're with guests, you tell them anything
no,
to help them?
they just, I think at this moment you forgot to watch the what your heart rate. Just be confident in your session. You need to find a very calm pace. No, for me, low cadence because at the time I was not the gear they use now. My gear was 29, 24 on the back, 29 the front. So the secret was don't lose the concentration. Uh, supporting the pain, especially my back. I have a lot of pain in my back, but when you push harder, you start having pain everywhere, especially after movement two, a man like me. So the secret is forget what the water, the aerated, just turn off everything and then listen your body. Very important for a rider is first to understand your body. Then you can watch all your data in your Garmin or your watch. So, but in the moment, they become secondary problem. It's not problem. The problem is survive. And what doesn't allow and doesn't help you. It's just your mind and your grinta. You cannot have a grinta from your watch. The grinta is inside you, in your mind. Just keep going and go.
Oof.
Accept to suffering for how long you can, and maybe you can do it. I think that's the secret.
There's the quote for the episode right there. Oh my goodness. Well, if anyone wants to join you in Provence, I know we have some trips, if not this year, definitely next year. And of course, everyone should definitely check out Grinta wherever they can find it. And hopefully it'll be more available widely coming soon, but it's at a lot of film festivals right now. Eros, thank you so much for chatting with us this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is there. As always,
Afternoon.
It's so fun. It's so fun talking to you.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, James. Always fun with you guys.
Thanks so much for joining us for Cycling Conversations with inGamba. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode, and we hope to see you on the bike soon.